Hi everybody, Dr. Biology here. This is a quick revise with Dr. B and I'm going to go through cell biology. This is probably the unit that a lot of students forget about because usually it's taught at the start of your course. So this might be useful for your mocks. It also might be useful for your main revision. So you will need to know the structure of both animal and plant cells. You'll notice that animal cells have 5 particular labels, so cytoplasm, nucleus, ribosome, mitochondrion and cell membrane. But you also notice that plant cells have 3 extra structures. These are chloroplasts, vacuole or permanent vacuole, and the cell wall. You're also expected to know the kind of functions as well, or similarities. So the nucleus, it controls the cell activity. Cytoplasm is the site of chemical reactions. Cell membrane controls what enters and exits the cell. Mitochondria is the site of respiration, which releases energy. And the ribosomes is where protein synthesis occurs. In plant cells, you've got a cell wall that's made of cellulose and it gives it strength and structure and support. Chloroplasts, they contain chlorophyll for photosynthesis, and a permanent vacuole contains cell sap for storage and structure. They also need you to know about prokaryotic cells. So a prokaryotic cell is something like a bacteria, and you'll notice the general structures that are there. But the main thing is that the differences are that there's no nucleus, no chloroplasts, no mitochondria, and they're much smaller than eukaryotes. You need to know about 6 specialized cells, so nerve cells, sperm cell, muscle cell, root hair cell, xylem and phloem. Here's some information. You might want to pause the video and write this down. You're also expected to know about light microscopes versus electron microscopes. So again, looking at the differences or similarities. So this Venn diagram shows you the differences very well. So you can see light microscope has a low magnification. It can view live specimens. Samples can be prepared very easily. It's less expensive and portable, and also one of the disadvantages is that it has lower resolution, whereas the electron microscope has a much higher magnification and resolution. It does require the samples to be in a vacuum, and they're often coated with metals like gold, so therefore the samples will be dead. There is a required practical, how to use a microscope. So this is a 6 marker, so describe how you would set up a microscope to examine a prepared slide under high power. Now you could go to the text box below, okay, and actually watch my video on how to use a microscope and then try to answer this question. So your answers should be made up of the following points. It does not need to be of all the following points, but these are the main points that you need to mention. So here's some more kind of similarities and differences. So if you look at the light microscope, it can go up to about times 2000 magnification, whereas the electron microscope can go up to times 2 million. Light microscope is alive or dead, so you'll notice that you can have a color sample, whereas electron is only black and white. You can see on the right hand side the image is color, but they've used a computer program like Photoshop to colorize it. But in electron they're dead, but also they can be 3-dimensional. So in an exam, watch out for that. If they ask you what type of microscope has been used to look at an image, if the image is 3-dimensional, it is definitely the electron microscope. You'll be asked to calculate the actual size and the magnification and image size. I use this little equation triangle called IAM, and that allows you to work things out. I would advise that you always measure, if they want you to measure the width of a cell, you always use millimeters. Do not use centimeters, use millimeters. And here are some kind of units that they might ask you to do. The main thing you need to know is, though, usually converting millimeters to micrometers. So to do that, you have to times your answer or multiply your answer by 1000. So here's an example. I'd like you to, in a minute, pause the video and see how you get on with this question. Okay, so to find out the actual size, you know that it's image divided by the magnification, so 8 millimeters divided by 1000. That gives you the answer in millimeters, and you times it by 1000 to get 8 micrometers. So measure the size in millimeters and convert the millimeters to micrometers by multiplying it by 1000. Cell division. So cells divide when an organism grows or repairs due to damage, and they produce genetically identical cells. Okay, so produces genetically identical cells. In terms of mitosis, don't use any names of phases. You don't need to know the different phases of mitosis. You just need to know the different stages. So here is very simple, a nice simple list to show you what happens. So the first thing is DNA replicates. Then secondly, one set of chromosomes is pulled to each end of the cell. The nucleus divides, so 2 nuclei form, and the cytoplasm or cell membranes divide, and that is known as cytokinesis. And 2 genetically identical cells form. Stem cells. So you need to know stem cell is an undifferentiated cell which is capable of giving rise to many more stem cells of the same type, but also differentiate to form specialized cells. So you need to know there are 2 types. There are embryonic stem cells and there are adult stem cells. Okay, so embryonic, they can differentiate into any type of cell. Adult stem cells, you only find them in certain tissues, and they can only differentiate into a limited range of cells. You would need to know about therapeutic stem cells. So this is using adult stem cells and making them behave like an embryonic stem cell. So this means that they're not rejected by the patient's body, so they could be used for medical treatment. So I'd pause and have a look at that diagram. Pros and cons. So you might see the word evaluate in an exam. So evaluate the use of embryonic stem cells. So using embryonic stem cells, there are many pros and many cons. So the main pros, you can treat a wide variety of diseases. There's lots available from IVF clinics. It is painless. Using them is better than wasting them. Cons, death of the embryo. So it's a potential life. It may not work. Embryos cannot be asked to give consent, and you might transfer a viral infection. Using adult stem cells, let's move me out of the way. So there are no ethical issues as the patient can give consent. It's well tried and tested. You get quick recovery. It's relatively safe. The cons are that any operation can cause you an infection. Fewer types of cells, different types of stem cells can be produced. There's a lower chance of rejection, but you could get a transfer of viral infections. If they mention plant stem cells, well, wherever there is new growth in the plant, whether that be in the root or in the shoot or in a leaf, that is called a meristem tissue. So meristems contain plant stem cells, and as long as the plant is growing, it is producing stem cells that can produce any type of plant cell. Okay, transport across cells. So I've done a little summary. So there are 3 things: diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. So diffusion, so movement from a high to a lower concentration, no extra energy is needed. Molecules such as oxygen or carbon dioxide can move in or out of a cell. So examples include oxygen diffusing into cells, oxygen diffusing from the lungs into the blood, carbon dioxide diffusing out of cells and out of the lungs so you can exhale. So osmosis is the movement of water molecules, okay, from a higher to a lower water potential or from a dilute to a more concentrated solution across a partially permeable membrane. Again, no energy required. It is only water molecules that move. So this could be water moving into plant cells, root cells, or water absorbed by the small intestine. Then active transport is from a low to a high concentration against a concentration gradient, requiring energy from respiration. So things like ions, mineral ions that go into roots, or glucose in the small intestine. The second required practical is for osmosis and looking at either salt or sugar concentrations going in or out of plant tissue, in this case a potato chip. So you might remember of doing this. Again, you can look at my video that is down below in the text. I'll put that link in the text box. So you need to know things like the independent variable. So in this case, the factor you're changing, the dependent variable, the factor you measure, and the control variable is the factor you keep the same. So in this experiment, we looked at different sugar concentrations. We look at the dependent variable is change in mass of the potato chip. Control variables, we looked at keeping the length and diameter of the chip the same. We dried the chip before weighing. We ensure the skin is removed, have the same volume of sugar solution, and the time the chips were left in the solution. One thing they do want you to know is about calculating percentage change. So you calculate the difference between the final value and the original value, divide the difference by the original value, and multiply it by 100. So in this case, the final mass is 60 minus 50, the original mass, to give you the change. So that's 10, the difference. And so you divide it by the original value, and then you times it by 100, and that will give you a percentage. Why do we look at percentage? Well, basically because all the chips will have different starting masses, and because you're using percentage change, it allows you to compare each sugar concentration. So this is the kind of things you would expect to see. So what we can see here is that there's a more dilute solution outside of the potato, okay, than inside the potato. So we know water moves from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, so water moves into the potato, so therefore its mass will be greater and a higher percentage change in mass. Whereas in a sugar solution, okay, which is a more concentrated solution than the potato, so water, there's more, it's more dilute inside the potato chip, so water moves out of the potato, causing it to have a loss in mass. So percentage change in mass could be negative. The last topic is related to gas exchange, and particularly they like you to know about surface area to volume ratios. So surface area to volume ratio is a measure of how much surface area in an organism is relative to its volume. So it affects heat loss, gas exchange, and diffusion rates. So here's a couple of examples. So even though the elephant it has a massive volume, it does have a small surface area compared to the size of that volume. So it does have big ears, which does help it lose heat, but the rate of diffusion is relatively slow. So particularly if you compare it to a mouse, so that has a much larger surface area to its volume, so it loses a lot of heat and the rate of diffusion is fast. Now they do need you to know, how to calculate the volume and surface area of a shape. So volume is width times length times depth. So in this example, be 6 times 6 times 6, so it's 216 meters cubed, because cubed is volume. And then surface area is 6x squared, so that'll be 6 meters is x, so 6 is x, so x squared is 6 times 6, which is 36. So 6 times 36 gives you 216 meters squared. Okay guys, hope you found that useful. I'm going to do some more videos over this period. Please do keep subscribed, and I'll see you soon.